So let's move on to define the problem statement. Now, generally, when we talk about a framework or a structure or an approach to define the problem statement, most people are generally unaware that there exists any framework to actually help you define a problem statement. So, if you look into software development, or if you look into, if you have been playing games and you try to play war games, you can kind of get a blueprint of the warfare approach, the military approach. Let's say you're trying to build a building, so you have an architecture's view of how the building is supposed to look like. You have models to actually visualize your solution in the problem. So unfortunately, when you talk about problem solving, most people misunderstand that there exists an approach to define the problem statement. Now, we have been talking about the banking problem, where the CEO of the bank has actually understood that the profit has been declining over the period of time. Now, think about this scenario. You are a person who is trying to solve this problem, and you want to pass on this problem statement to somebody else. And if that new person who is completely unaware about the situation looks into that problem statement, reads it once, and gets complete understanding of the problem scenario. Now, that would need the problem to be defined in a structured way. So that's when we're coming to an approach or a strategy or a framework that will help us define the problem statement. Now, once we define this problem statement, and if you pass on this statement to somebody else who is not really aware about the problem statement, can read this and get complete understanding of what the actual problem is. So this framework is called SCQ, which stands for Situation, Complication, and Question. This is a widely accepted framework which evolved from the origins of McKinsey. It eventually made place into several consulting firms. Data analytics firms like New Sigma and a couple of others have an approach similar to the situation, complication, question. It's slightly more refined, so we are looking at a more generalized way of solving problems. Different companies have evolved their strategies and evolved their frameworks to suit their requirements better. We look at a generic approach, how we can define a problem. Now we are using the SCQ approach. Now the SCQ approach defines the problem by defining it across three segments. The first one is situation. So over here, first we define the situation. Situation actually leads to the current situation. So how does your current situation look like? Once you have defined the current situation, you'll actually help and directly move to the end outcome. This is your desired future state. It's the way you understand this is you are right now on this problem, and your desired future state when you solve the problem should look like this. Now for your path to move from point A to point B, how does it look like? What can you do? So that's when we say you need to use or you have a roadblock, and that's a complication represented over here. So the complication is actually the hurdle that blocks your path from point A to point B, which is your current situation, to your future desired state. Now, what is this complication? It'll be followed up by a key question, and that question is represented over here. So generally, if you summarize this, we say that you have a current situation, you have to move to a desired future state. Now, to move from point A to point B, there's a complication, and to solve that complication, we have a key question. Now, this key question could be followed up with multiple sub-questions and so on. So let's try to fit our use case into this scenario. How does the framework support and detail our use case? Now, what is the current situation? So our current situation is profits for XYZ Bank has plummeted by 35%, cash liquidity has been declining, and operational expenses have been increasing year on year. Banks would like to study the major reasons for this crisis. So this is a situation. There is a crisis. They have been seeing declining profits, increasing operational expenses, and the cash liquidity has also been declining. What is required? What is the desired future state over here? So this is a crisis. How will the desired future state look like? Now, the desired future state will be actually the one without the complication. It would be XYZ Bank understands the various reasons that resulted in declining profits and the overall crisis. So that's the first part of the solution. Second part would be the team has a robust framework to counteract and resolve the crisis. So the first one would be you understand the problem, the reasons for the problem, the reasons for what actually helped in evolving the problem, and then you actually have a means to counterattack and solve the crisis. So that's the desired future state. Now, what stops you from moving from point A, that's a problematic situation, to your desired future state? The problem is the complication, which states the major factors that contribute towards the declining profits are not known. Fair enough. Now, how do we solve that? That's when we ask a simple question. So, what are the likely key factors that led to the financial crisis? Now, how do they impact the crisis? What actions would circumvent the impact of these factors? If we have answers to these questions, that essentially solves a problem. So this is the simplest way we can define a problem in a structured way. Now, if someone who is aware about the situation, complication, and question approach, you can actually pass on this slide to somebody else who is agnostic about the problem, and he can still be completely aware about the problem just by reading the slide. So this is the way leadership teams who would need to understand the problem with the minimum amount of words or within the minimum time frame, how do you get to understand the entire problem? That's the way we go ahead, the SCQ approach. Now, once we have the problem statement defined, we need to design the blueprint for the problem. So now we have a fair amount of idea. You have the current situation defined, you have the desired future state defined, you know the complication, and you know what questions you need to answer to resolve the complication. So we need to build a blueprint that will help you solve this problem in a structured way. Let's move on to understand how we can build the blueprint.